There we go. Okay, so here we are today talking about sclerology, but let's do our usual introductory pieces, okay? I'm just so happy to be with you today, and I'm excited to see so many people joining us on so many platforms. Thank you for that. I would love it if you would take a moment to introduce yourself. If you would just in whatever platform you're in, tell me maybe where you are, where you're living, maybe you're on vacation, where are you on vacation, whatever, where you are. And I would love to know if you have background in iridology. So if you put where you're from and then iridology or no iridology behind your name, that will help me to tweak this presentation on the fly so that I can make it more appropriate for you. And it's always good for us to make these presentations as customized as we can. At the end of our time together today, I'm going to offer you a special invitation, so stay with me. And today we are specifically going to be looking at the sclera, and we're going to be looking at it in the context of iridology as well. Of course, we need to do our disclaimer. This information is meant for your education only. It is not meant to diagnose or prescribe. You are responsible for any results, good or bad, that result from using this information. Use this information of your own free will. Little introduction about myself. Why do I feel like I should be able to teach you about iridology and sclerology? Well, I have been a holistic health coach for over 4 decades now. And I got into holistic healing way, way back. Seriously, I started getting interested in the mid 1970s, only I didn't know that's what it was called then. I was a teenager. I was having some health problems. The doctors couldn't seem to put their finger on it, couldn't tell me whether it was going one way or another way. They weren't life-threatening problems. They were just uncomfortable problems. And so when I went away to university, I met a young man who knew a little bit about herbs, a little bit about nutrition, a little bit about iridology, a little bit about reflexology, and he started teaching me what he knew. And I fell in love with him, and I kept studying, and then we got married. So over the years that I've been in this industry, which again is over 4 decades, I have written several books and self-published, self-distributed them. Pregnancy Naturally, the Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, Healthy Kids Naturally, The Essential Guide to Nature's Sunshine Products, Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Levels 1 and 2, the Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology Textbook, which is the textbook we use in the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course. I've also designed and taught many courses, including Herbology Level 1, which was 20 hours of practical training for in-home use of commercially prepared herbs. Herbology Level 2, which was 16 hours, again, of practical training on the use of commercially prepared herbal combinations and how to understand what a combination could be used for beyond what the front of the label said. I've also been a certified prenatal educator for a period of time, and so I've designed and taught antenatal classes. And I've also designed and taught and currently teach the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System, which is an IPA-approved course that envelops all of Level 1 and all of Level 2 to prepare my students for certification through IPA. Stay with me to the end of today's workshop. We have another Dynamic Iridology course starting in June, and I have a special invitation for you. I am also a proud member and a credentialed member of the Canadian Association of Holistic Nutrition Professionals, the Canadian Association of Natural Nutrition Practitioners. So for both of those, I've had to attend school to get nutrition training and prove that I had passed those courses and done well enough to be affiliated with these groups. The Alberta Herbalist Association, I am also a master herbalist. And again, I am a professional member of the Alberta Herbalist Association. As we go into this, I would love it if you would engage with me. Feel free to ask questions, pop them into the comment or chat box or the thread, depending on which platform you are joining me from. And I should have opened the chat box earlier because we've got Kara from Marilyn, and she's done a little iridology. We've got Gina, who's in Los Angeles, and she also has iridology. We have Raju, and I hope I said that right, from London, England. And we've got Barbie, also a certified iridologist from Smithfield, Texas. Welcome. Thank you for sharing with me that little bit about who you are. I truly appreciate that. As we talk about sclerology today, I'm inviting you to envision how adding iridology and sclerology to your skill set as a health professional will enhance your business and help you help your clients at a deeper level. Think about whether you want to only learn how to do a surface analysis, recognize the markings, for instance, or would you rather learn how to do an analysis at a deep level where you connect the markings and where the eyes will show you what questions to ask? Think about also, do you want to be mentored for years to come, or do you want to be left hanging on your own after you finish a course? Okay. So many people that I know have done an iridology course, and after the course was done, they had no one that they could go to ask questions of and to get coaching on difficult cases. They had unanswered questions. So I'm asking you to keep those thoughts percolating in the back of your brain as we talk about sclerology today. So let's take a look at some sclerology and see how this actually works. When we do iridology, and we're going to start with the iridology, we are looking at the iris of the eye. Now, the iris of the eye contains primarily genetic information. It tells us what a person's inherent potentials are. The iris doesn't tell us where the problems are right now. It tells us where the weak links are, where the strong pieces are. And it's really important for us to remember that the iris doesn't tell us, for the most part, where current problems are. It tells us what the inherent potentials are. Now, as we look at that, then we're going to look at the sclera, and we want to understand that the sclera gives us information that is different from what the iris gives us. Right? Again, the iris gives us the inherent potential. This gives us a bit of the indication as to where we would expect to find weak links, where we might expect to find symptoms. And as we understand and are able to connect many of the different iris markers, we can understand on a deeper level what the potential problems might be. We can understand the symptoms more fully that the client is reporting to us. And as we understand all of this, we can do a better job of creating targeted and supportive programs for our client rather than shotgun patterns, right? When we look at the sclera, we know that the sclera is in many ways extremely dynamic and very active. Now, you know that if you've ever had a really good hard cry and you went into the washroom to look in the mirror to see, oh my goodness, do I look like I've been bawling my eyes out? And your eyes are bloodshot, right? And so you splash some cool water on your face and you take a few minutes, take a few deep breaths, maybe just, chill there for a few minutes. And it doesn't take long for all of those blood vessels that were hyper irritated from all that crying to start settling down. Does that make sense, that your sclera is actually pretty dynamic in that way? So when we see that, when we see blood vessels in an iris or in an eyeball, not in an iris, you can see blood vessels. You can see blood vessels in this iris actually. But when we're not talking about those, we're talking about these blood vessels today. When we see blood vessels in the sclera, they teach us where problems either are brewing and are subclinical, or where we've got problems going right now. Now, again, this isn't going to necessarily tell us exactly what the problem is, but it's going to help us understand, again, what our client's symptoms are. And we can oftentimes correlate what we see in the sclera with another weak link area in the iris. So we use the sclera to help us understand, again, the current situation with that client. What is our client's immediate chemistry? What is their body doing right now? Again, on a broad level, because we cannot use this to diagnose either. This is one of the reasons why we really like to do iris photos once a year, sometimes twice a year. We're not looking for changes in the iris. There are changes that can happen. We can see various markers accumulating. We won't see them disperse, but we want to be able to monitor changes in the sclera, because this will change very quickly. So let's look at a few different scleral markers. Now, we certainly don't have time to go into the depth with these that we do in the dynamic iridology assessment system. So we're going to be touching lightly on these. For those of you who are just joining us, welcome. Thank you for being with us today. I would love it if you would just drop a note, a comment as to where you physically are on the face of the planet, where you're joining us from. And I would love to know if you have any iridology background already. So whether you're with me on Facebook or Instagram or live on the webinar, please engage with me, and please do feel free to ask questions as we go. The first thing we're going to look at is called a trauma fork. Sometimes it's called a concussion mark. When we look at this eye, we've got this one blood vessel that comes down, and it very smoothly and very neatly splits into two. It forms a very graceful upside down or tilted Y, letter Y. And oftentimes these markers in the sclera can stand alone, whereas oftentimes the markers we see in an iris don't stand alone. We need to correlate them. Oftentimes the markers in a sclera do stand alone. These are the eyes of a young female client. She was 17, and when I have been her herbalist since before she was born. I started working with her parents long before this young lady was conceived. And so I know her history well. Her mother has taken very good care of her. In her grade 12 year at school, a hooligan at her school decided it would be really funny to whack her on the head really hard with a very thick hard-covered book. It gave her a very serious concussion that took her several months to recover from. She nearly lost that year of school. And so, unfortunately, I don't have photos from before this, because the photos that I had taken prior to this were very, very old and were digital prints, or were not digital prints, they were just prints. And so I don't have a good comparison photo. But these were taken within just a few months after the incident, when she was able to safely leave the house and walk without falling over, right? And concussion can lead to some real vertigo issues. And so as we looked at this and we understood what the history was, she was still healing from this. Now, unfortunately, since doing these photos just a few months after this, she moved all the way across the continent. And so I'm not able to get new pictures of her until she comes back for a visit. And that will probably be a very long time, because she has no roots here anymore. At any rate, this is a concussion sign, or a trauma fork. And when we see this, it suggests there has been a significant, usually physical, but not always just physical, impact on the body. Where the center of the trauma fork is, if we draw a line straight in, it tells us which part of her body will be most significantly impacted. The breadth of the fork tells us how far reaching that impact is. Now, really important to notice the texture of these blood vessels. Notice these blood vessels don't look wobbly like these blood vessels do. And that is a key distinction here. Beatrice is asking, are we going to get a recording afterwards? Beatrice, those who have registered for the webinar will receive the replay tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, my time. That will probably be tomorrow afternoon, your time, because you're in a very different time zone. Okay, so there's the trauma fork. We see a lot of these in people who are engaged in contact sports, rugby, football, even soccer, things where there is a chance of a significant head impact. Here we have, and this is going to be harder for those of you on Instagram and even on Facebook to see. Here we have a man who is about 70 years old. And what I want you to look for, and I'm hoping you can see this, is there is a slight yellow tinge in his sclera right here and over here as well. Now, again, we do not diagnose and we do not prescribe. Medically, however, this yellow tinge is called jaundice. Now, jaundice is something that medical personnel watch for. It's something that they want to be aware of. This suggests an elevated bilirubin level, and it suggests that the bilirubin is not being excreted properly. Bilirubin is what is the byproduct of the breakdown of old blood vessels, or sorry, of old blood cells. And the bilirubin needs to be conjugated, which means properly broken down, to be excreted. The liver is supposed to conjugate the bilirubin. This is why it's important for us to have a good anatomy and physiology background, because we need to understand these processes. So when we are looking at these, we think, this must be an indication of liver issues. Now, this fellow doesn't drink. He has a fairly decent diet, fairly decent lifestyle. And so that means that I did suggest to him that he might want to go see his doctor and get his bilirubin checked. We also then want to think, if he's got yellow or if he's got jaundiced whites of his eyes, are there any other indicators that suggest his liver might want to be a troublemaker at some point in time? And with this fellow, there is. It's a little hard to see because of where the light is sitting right here, but we've got this fiber that is coming across other fibers. This is in the liver reaction field. Okay, we also have this little cloud right here. So we've got a couple of little things sitting in the organ reaction field that could suggest that at some point in time, his liver wants to have a bad attitude about things. Now, the other thing we want to remember is that an iridology map is never cast in stone. This is super important. We cannot say that every person's organs are in exactly the same place, right? So, for example, the appendix can be pretty much anywhere on the ascending colon, on that, on your bowel. And so the map that shows the iris map that shows the appendix in a particular place is inaccurate, as someone's appendix is not right there at the base of the cecum. And so when we know this, then we can look and say, well, I wonder if this is also something to do with his liver. It's a little higher than most iris maps would put it, but I have to wonder if this is also an iris mark for an indication of a weak link for the liver in this person. So again, this person, I referred to back to his medical doctor, but I also know that with jaundice, we need to do a few things. We need to make sure his fluid intake is high enough, that he's drinking water. Really important. We need to make sure he's getting sunshine. Interesting that sunshine or full spectrum light can help us to conjugate the bilirubin. And so those are a couple of things that I could recommend to him to do right off the bat. Another great thing would be to make sure he's eating lots of leafy green vegetables, because the leafy greens, the bitter greens, support the liver as well. Barbie is asking, with a trauma fork to the head, would you recommend cranial work, also massage, or watch the areas of concern where the trauma fork points are located? All of the above, as appropriate for the client. Okay, so the young woman we were looking at for the trauma fork, she was doing chiropractic, she was doing massage, and of course for concussion, the protocols are very strict. Basically it's quiet, dark room, virtually no movement for a few weeks, right? And so we needed to do all of that with her. And with her, the trauma fork was pointing to the edge of her brain, which, considering she was hit on the front corner of her head, just above a sinus area, it all fit perfectly. Thank you for asking that question, Barbie. That was a great question. All right, so again, with this fellow, we got him drinking water, we got him getting out into the sunshine, and we worked with increasing his leafy greens while we were waiting for him to get to the doctor and get some blood work done so that we could make sure that he was on the right track and to have him medically assessed to make sure there wasn't something more serious going on. Sometimes jaundice is a genetic situation where it's really nothing to worry about. Sometimes it is a serious indicator of a major problem. Spiral vessel, right here, we have a loop that looks kind of like that. So we're looking at this loop over here. So we have it right here. This suggests that there is a possibility of changes with the circulation, with the circulatory system, changes in the circulatory system. Often the change is about blood pressure. When we see one that looks like this, we usually think that the blood pressure is on its way up. Now, again, if we've been monitoring this sclerae for a little while, for a couple of years, and we haven't seen this before in this person, but suddenly we are seeing that pop up, we know that the problem is brewing, right? And so I always suggest to my students that they should have a blood pressure cuff. They should be checking their clients for blood pressure issues. Not that we can diagnose it, but what I do is I put the cuff on my client and I have my client read me the numbers after the pressure is taken, and then I show them a chart that says what healthy readings are and what high normal and what elevated are. And I let my client tell me where their blood pressure falls. So I'm not diagnosing, I'm simply providing a blood pressure cuff, right? And so with this, again, this was the first time I'd seen this client. She did not report any blood pressure issues. She was not on any blood pressure medications. So at this point, then I needed to be asking her questions about blood pressure. I needed to ask her questions about her lifestyle, about her diet, and I needed to then create a protocol for her. Now, she is also a nutrition coach, so that was pretty easy to do, to say, I'm seeing this. It suggests that your blood pressure may be working on going up. And then we had a conversation about what she knew about nutrition for blood pressure and for the vascular system. Where did she feel? What did she feel was going to be the largest impact? Was this an adrenal situation, a kidney situation, a heart situation, or a lung situation, right? And we were able to distill down and create a program for her. When we suspect from the marking that it might be low blood pressure, then we probably want to be working with adrenals. If we suspect it might be too high, maybe we want to start with some arginine, because that will buy us time to do deeper and more effective work. So we always want to be considering not just what we see in the eyes, but the eyes are going to teach us what questions to ask. And then we can consider, where is our client actually at? What is their knowledge? How do we work with what they know? And how do we build on that? How do we create protocols that our client is going to agree to stick with, rather than just barraging them with everything we know? Right? Is this making sense about how these sclera can give us clues as to where the weak links may be, what might be going on in the body right now? If this is making sense, I want to say it makes sense in the comments. So great to have Chevy and Shamarla with us on Facebook. That is wonderful. We've got lots of people joining us on Instagram as well today. Thank you for being there. The meander vessel, this again is excellent. Barbie, thank you for saying this is making sense. And Janet is also saying it makes sense. Oh, this is so good. Oh, hi, Maria. Good to have you with us on the live webinar. This is a gentleman, again, in his 70s. And yeah, I always start every appointment with, what would you like my help with? And he was just really more curious than actually focused on making anything better. That always makes it difficult because it means that I'm picking the starting point for them, that we're going to start with the questions we want to ask and trying to find something that resonates with him as a concern. So when I look at his eyes, what I notice is his pupil is not round. We actually, in the dynamic iridology course, we do spend some time talking about pupil shape and how it gives us dynamic information as well. And then, of course, we look at the iris, and then we look at the sclera. And in this fellow's sclera, we see many of these very twisty, turny blood vessels. These are called meanders or meandering vessels. Anna Beckwith would like to learn a lot more. I will reach out to you, Anna, and we'll talk about how to learn more. This suggests circulation is getting congested. And the thicker it is, and the more bold it is, the more congested it is, and the longer it's probably been like that. When we've seen these get really thick and heavy like this, it's very difficult to shrink them down. Think of this as a varicose vein of the eye. Varicose veins can be shrunk. It takes a lot of work. And here we're not actually simply trying to get this out of the eye, because this is an indication of things going on in the body. So we want to balance the body as well. So we also want to notice that on his sclera, and I hope this is showing up for you, however you're seeing this, that right in here, his sclera looks darker, sort of a bluey tinge. That's also not something we actually want to see in here, because when we see this darker shading, this bluey tinge in here, it again suggests some circulatory issues that are getting to be pretty intense and really should be addressed. So with this fellow, based on his pupil, his iris, and his sclera, we had a conversation about his diet, about his lifestyle, about his health history, and we really lasered in on his circulatory system, because he's at that age where his circulatory system could be at risk. And we see a couple of different kinds of markings in here that suggest everything from the possibility for his blood lipids to be out of balance, for his liver to not be regulating those well, for him to possibly have the MTHFR defect, which would lead to elevated homocysteine, which leads to vascular issues, right? And so as we see that in the eyes and see those predispositions, it means that we need to have those deep conversations, and we need to be creating a client-specific program. I don't believe in cookie cutter protocols at all. This again is a female client. She was in her early 40s when I first met her. There's her iris from the front. Now, again, this might be a little harder to see depending on your platform. Right here, we have a thickened something on her sclera. And on on her opposite eye, we have the same kind of slightly yellowish thickened blob developing right there. Now, these blobs are called pinguecula. They are medically recognized, and they are typically benign. They are usually at 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the eye, most common laterally. They can be medially as well. When they are yellowish, we know that there's some liver involvement in this as to how the fats and proteins are being processed, and the fat protein matrix is being deposited on the surface of the eye, and it won't wipe off. It's a surgical procedure to remove it. So it's interesting, however, to note that her eyes show a lot of liver indicators, a lot of suggestions of MTHFR, and thereby a lot of possibilities also having elevated homocysteine. But going back to liver, a lot of liver indicators sitting in her irides, and those liver indicators are now developing in her sclerae as well. So of course, with this, we want to be doing a lot of liver work. We need to remember that when we do liver work, when we do any work, it's not just about diet and adding supplements and vitamins, because there is always an emotional undercurrent as well. Always, right? And so I needed to ask her about the emotions of the liver to find out if there was anything there that was possibly triggering the liver to be unbalanced. And we worked from there to begin working with her. Now, I don't have any after photos of her either, because these are not going to go away unless they are surgically removed. And there's a very strong risk of them growing back, especially if we don't balance out the liver, the lifestyle, and the emotions. Is this all making sense? If this is making sense, give me an "oh yeah" in the comments. Yes, thank you, Barbie. Barbie, that's so polite. Yes, instead of "oh yeah." Thank you. All righty. So some health professionals want to learn iridology just because they do, and that's perfectly fine. And after they learn it, they find that it helps them with so many other things in their work. It helps them to create faster assessments, helps them to be more accurate in what they do. And you've seen that with what we've done, even with this little bit of sclerology today. And it helps them create better and faster rapport, because instead of using a broad and general intake questionnaire, you are taking the client's symptoms, pairing that with what you see in the iris, the pupil, the sclera, and you are understanding their symptoms based on what you see for inherent predispositions or dynamic situations that you see in the eyes. And then you can ask very specific questions that are client specific. That builds rapport very quickly. I've never had a client complain about not having to fill out a 3 or 4 or 10-page questionnaire. Seriously. It also eliminates the need for an intake form. I still have my clients sign a release form, a waiver that says they know I'm not a medical doctor. I can't diagnose, I can't prescribe. My recommendations will be nutritional, based on, and also based on the historical use of herbs, as well as practical lifestyle recommendations. So as we do that, I want to let you know that registration for the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System is now open. Our next course will be starting on June 2nd. This is a course for health professionals. Now, I've had people say, but I'm not a health professional, can I take the course? Let me explain what I mean by health professional. A health professional is the easiest way for me to say that you need to have completed at least one college level anatomy and physiology course. You need to have a deep understanding of the body and how it works in order to actually be able to do iridology well. My benchmark, sort of the thing that I use as the screening tool, is if you can list 5 of the 500 different things the liver does, you'll probably be okay in the course. But if you also have an A&P course under your belt, then that is going to help you a lot. The Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course is the only fully mentored course for holistic health professionals. And again, we really want you to have A&P under your belt. If you want to learn how the markers play off each other, we work with that a lot in this course. If you want to learn what questions the eyes want you to ask, the eyes teach us what to ask. Client symptoms, what we see in the eyes, we understand the connections that we see in the eyes and those connections to the symptoms. What more do we need to know from our client? If you want to learn how to create programs your clients can be more successful in implementing, that's important. If your programs are too, are too complex, clients are going to have a harder time sticking with it, and they're not going to want to come back. What if you want to be mentored for the long term? And I'm talking about years, not just mentored while you're enrolled in the program. Is that something that you would want as well? I'm going to post a link in the chat box on the webinar. The rest of you who are watching us on another platform, please make a note of this. I need to do this properly. I need to put that there. If you meet those requirements, that you have A&P under your belt, that you want to learn how to do iridology at a level that teaches you how to connect the markers, you want to learn iridology at a level that teaches you about what questions you need to ask your client, if you want to learn iridology to be able to create succinct next step protocols for your clients, and if you value being mentored for the long term, having someone that you can take questions to years after you finish your training, then we should have a conversation. As we are talking about this, I also want you, I'm asking you to consider, why am I not able to, there we go. I'm asking you to consider what would you expect to pay for a course that offered that much depth and that much support? What would you expect to pay? This is what one of my grads said. This is Sky, and she is a herbalist. She was unable to come to the classes live, but since every class session is recorded, she said, I could not have asked for better layout for learning. I was unable to make it to the scheduled classes, but I love the recordings, but the recordings of the classes were amazing. I loved the weekly quizzes. I am glad to know that I always have you and my iridology community to turn to if anything ever comes up where I may be challenged. Thank you for being a part of my journey and for all the support provided. You did not miss one detail. I love hearing things like that. This is from Dawn. Dawn is a graduate of the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition, so she has a very solid nutrition background. She said, Judith, I would like to thank you so much for all you've done to help me on my iridology journey. I appreciate your teaching skill. Dawn is a retired school teacher, by the way. Your follow-up, your availability, and all the time you spend presenting and marking. I am blessed to have you in my life. I am blessed to have my students in my life. I only attract the nicest people, seriously. And so, just saying. This is Karen Choate. She is a certified natural health professional who specializes in gut health. And she said, Judith, I just returned from a regenerative detox course where iridology is implemented. I spread the word about what a wonderful teacher you are. Most people I talked with did not have anywhere near the same experience with their iridology education. They had no support, they have unanswered questions and a lot of confusion. Mostly they finished their classes not knowing how to implement what they have learned. I feel so absolutely blessed to have been taught by you. I feel totally supported, even still as I've graduated, and for her it's almost 4 years, might even be 5 years now, years ago. I don't think there's anyone out there practicing, educating, and teaching iridology like you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm eternally grateful for your never-ending patience and support. Love it. My goal is to turn out iridologists who are the best in the world, not just people who've done a course and can hang a certificate on the wall. I want to turn out the best iridologists. If that's who you want to be, we need to chat. So I'm inviting you to book a call with me to talk about the course. If you are a health professional, maybe you're a nutrition coach, a massage therapist, or master herbalist or herbalist. Maybe you're an ND or an RN or a massage therapist. Who have I missed here? Maybe a chiropractor. If you have that background in anatomy and physiology, maybe you were a phys ed major in university and you've got the A&P, perfect. And you want to add iridology to your skill set, I want to talk to you. Book a call using this link, tinyurl.com/insight-call, and let's talk about it. The next course starts on June 2nd. Registration closes on May 31st. If you are ready to invest time and money to learn this amazing assessment tool, book a call. Let's talk. Here are the details of the program, or some of the details. The course is taught over 20 weeks. We have 1 2¼ hour live webinar class each week. I do it that way specifically because there's a lot to learn, and you need time to practice between classes. That gives you the opportunity, when you've practiced between classes, to bring questions to the next class session. Classes are recorded so you can review or study on your own time. So if you're like Sky and you can't make it to the live classes, you can still successfully complete the course by watching the recordings, by submitting your questions on our social media platform, our private social media platform, or you might be able to attend one of the 2 live online 1-hour mentoring sessions we hold every month, because they are at different times than the classes. This is a great place to bring questions about cases you're working on, about where you're at in the course. It's also a good place for us to talk about business principles. This is where so much of the mentoring happens, and it's just included as my gift to you. The mentoring continues even after you complete the course, right? It doesn't end when you have your 20th lesson. It ends when you decide it ends, or when I retire, whichever comes first, and I'm not planning on retiring soon. You get a 225-page downloadable textbook that is kept current and up to date. 45 pages of cheat sheets. These are your quick reference pieces, so that when you're with a client and you're thinking, I know what that sign can mean, I don't remember what questions to ask, or I don't remember what the most common recommendations are when I see this. That's all in the cheat sheets. Just flip to the right page and you've got your thought process outlined in charts. We have small class sizes. I limit my classes to no more than 10 students per class. This is to ensure that every student has the opportunity to ask questions, to get their questions answered. And, you know, sometimes we get to lesson 5 and someone says, yeah, can we go back to lesson 2? Absolutely, we can. I had someone once in lesson 15 go, you know, I've been reviewing and I realized it wasn't clear. Can we go back to lesson 3? Absolutely. Let's make sure it's rock solid, crystal clear. I will find another way to explain things. I'll find another analogy, another graphic, whatever it takes, because each of us has a different learning style, right? One learning style, one teaching method doesn't work for every person. And so I get really creative with coming up with ways to make things easier for my students to understand. I include mentoring for the certification exams. Many teachers charge extra. You pay one tuition for your course and a separate tuition if you want to be mentored for the IPA certification. I include that mentoring in my tuition as a gift for each of my students. And payment plans are available. So again, if you are interested in this, I would love to have a conversation with you. I would love to see how we can make, how we can get you into the program. And I'm not a strong arm person. I will truly tell you, and I've told many people that I thought they weren't quite ready, that they needed better A&P, for instance, right? Or we've talked about where they wanted their business to go. And I said, you're welcome to take the class. You've got the foundation. I cannot see that this is going to help your business, right? And so I don't want people in the class where they're going to drop out because they feel overwhelmed, or where it's really not the right fit for where they want their business to go, or where they want their life to go. So I'm inviting you to book a call with me to talk about the course. If you are a health professional, again, a nutrition coach, a herbalist, a chiropractor, a massage therapist, a naturopath, a registered nurse, a medical doctor, any other kind of holistic or of health professional, and you've got the A&P under your belt, let's have a call. Let's see if the program fits, and let's see if the June 2nd course is the right place for you. Now, I think I've answered all of the questions that have come in Does anyone else have any other questions they would like to ask? I'll give everybody just a few seconds while I talk about what a beautiful spring day it is here in Calgary. We have sunshine. Now we need rain. Now we need rain. Barbie says, thank you. You are most welcome, Barbie. It's been a pleasure having you with me today. Anything else? No other questions? All righty. Those of you who are live with me on the webinar, not on Facebook or not on Instagram, because I have no way of getting this to you, but those of you who are with me on the webinar will receive the replay link tomorrow, so you can watch for that. Don't wait for the replay link to schedule a call. There's not very many call slots left before enrollment closes on May 31st. So if you're thinking you'd like to try to get into the June 2nd course, I need to talk with you in the next couple of days. All righty. So there we have it. Gina says, what if there's a cluster of blood vessels in the tear duct or near it? So very nasal, distanced from the pupil. It would truly depend on what that cluster of blood vessels looks like, because different configurations of blood vessels mean different things. All right, so we would actually need to see it to know exactly how to assess it. Good question. Good question, Janet, and you are most welcome. Excellent. So with that, my friends, and dry eyes cause a lot more of these. Anna Beckwith on Instagram, not to the best of my knowledge. They don't disappear. They can disappear depending on how long they've been there for. And at the very least, they can be minimized when we get to the root cause. These blood vessels are not necessarily caused by dry eyes, but they may be caused by the thing that is causing dry eyes. Dry eyes is simply a symptom, right? So it's a matter of understanding, why does this person have dry eyes? Working with the root of the problem. And if the blood vessels are there because of that root problem, then they may soften or they may minimize or disappear. All righty. Hopefully that was helpful. Anna on Facebook, I would love to reach out to you. So I will be reaching out by Messenger to touch base with you. And Anna, I'm going to reach out to you too. And anybody else, feel free to book a call and let's talk about the course. Look forward to speaking with you soon, and make it a healthy day. Bye for now.